So you're a web developer and you're trying to make that jump, right? That leap from junior to expert. Well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to dig into those tough HTML and CSS interview questions that really separate the pros from everyone else. You know, it's the question that's always in the back of your mind, isn't it? It's there during every interview, every code review. You know the syntax, you can build the stuff. So what's the real difference maker? What is that secret ingredient that truly levels you up? Well, here it is. The secret is moving beyond just knowing what a piece of code does to truly understanding why it's there and how the browser is going to interpret it. And that is the real leap, right? Going from just writing code to actually engineering solutions. So we're going to break this down with some classic interview questions that get right to the heart of this deeper way of thinking. All right, first up, let's talk HTML. We're going to look at 3 super common scenarios where a junior dev might give an okay answer, but an expert, they give a brilliant one. Okay, let's kick things off with a classic. You've got an image that's purely decorative, like a background texture or some stylistic swirl. It adds 0 new information. A junior developer might think, well, it's useless, so I'll just leave the alt attribute off completely. But is that what a pro would do? Yeah, no. It's actually a huge accessibility trap. And here's what's so interesting. If you make that common mistake and just leave out the alt attribute, a screen reader might try to be helpful and just read the file name out loud. You get something like blurry blue swirl v2 final.png. I mean, that's just confusing and clunky, right? The expert move is to include the attribute but leave it empty. That alt equals empty isn't a mistake, it's a deliberate signal. You are actively telling assistive technology, hey, this image is purely for decoration, you can safely and completely ignore it, which makes for a much cleaner experience for the user. Okay, on to the next one. Everybody knows you use post for passwords because it's more secure than get. That's kind of the baseline, junior level answer. But the follow-up question, the one that really catches people, is this. What's the other big difference? So the expert answer all comes down to one powerful word, idempotency. A GET request is idempotent. Think of it like asking for a menu at a restaurant. You can ask it once, you can ask it 100 times. The menu itself doesn't change. You're just getting information. But a post request is non-idempotent. That's like actually placing an order. If you do it twice, you're going to get 2 meals and a much bigger bill. You've changed the state of the server. And this is exactly why your browser warns you when you hit refresh after submitting a form with post. It's basically asking, hey, are you sure you want to place that order again? All right, final HTML challenge. We're always told, use semantic tags, use button, use nav, because they have all this meaning baked right in. So if we're doing that properly, why do ARIA attributes even exist? Isn't that just redundant? The expert answer is that you use ARIA to fill what's called the semantic gap. So let's say you built a really cool custom component using a div. With your CSS and JavaScript, you make it look and act just like a button. Perfect. A sighted user sees a button. But a screen reader, it just sees a plain old div. It has no idea it's interactive. By adding role equals button, you are filling that semantic gap. You're basically whispering to the screen reader, hey, I know this is a div, but trust me, treat it like a button. It's an accessibility superpower. Okay, so we've covered the meaning and structure in HTML. Now let's switch gears and talk about styling and layout in CSS. We're going to focus on 3 core concepts that, once you really master them, will solve like 90% of your layout headaches. I'm talking about specificity, the box model, and positioning. This has to be one of the most common CSS interview questions of all time. I'd bet almost every one of you has heard this before. You've got 3 different rules, all pointing at the exact same element. Who wins the fight? Well, the browser doesn't guess. It settles this fight with a scoring system called specificity. And as you can see from this chart, it's not just about which rule comes last, it's about weight. It's about power. Think of it like a point system. An idea is worth 100 points, a class is worth 10, and a simple element tag is worth 1. The highest score always wins. So in our little battle, the ID selector, with its 100 points, just completely overpowers the other 2. And when you think about it, the logic here is just perfect, right? An ID is supposed to be totally unique on a page. It's like a person's social security number. A class can be slapped onto a bunch of different elements, and an element tag, well, that applies to all of them. So it just makes sense. The more specific the selector, the higher its score. Next up, let's talk about the absolute foundation of all CSS layout, the box model.
It's this incredibly simple but profound idea that every single thing on a web page is, at its core, a rectangle. And understanding the four parts of this rectangle, well, it's completely non-negotiable.
Now, the best way I've ever found to remember this is the photo frame analogy. It's brilliant. The content is your actual photo. The padding is that cardboard matting inside the frame that gives the photo a little breathing room. The border is the actual wooden frame itself. And finally, the margin is the empty space on the wall between your photo frame and the next one over. It's a perfect mental model.
Now, the box model has this one kind of counterintuitive default that drives nearly every new developer crazy. By default, if you set an element's width to, say, 200 pixels, and then add some padding, the element actually becomes wider than 200 pixels. It's maddening. The fix, and honestly a universal best practice, is setting box sizing border box. This just changes the math so that the padding and the border are included inside the width you set. It's simple. The width you set is the final width you get. So much better.
All right, for our last CSS challenge, let's talk about the properties that let you just break out of the normal flow of the page and put elements exactly where you want them. How in the world do position relative and position absolute actually work together? The key, and you have to remember this, is to think of it like an anchor and a boat. First, you take a parent element and you set it to position relative. Visually, this does almost nothing, but behind the scenes, it secretly drops an anchor. Then you take a child element inside of it and set that to position absolute. This yanks the child out of the normal flow of the page and tells it, okay, you are now free to move, but you have to base your coordinates, your top, right, bottom, and left, on your nearest parent that has an anchor. And that right there is the expert rule of thumb you need to remember. You almost never use one without the other. It's a team. Relative on the parent, absolute on the child. This powerful combo is the secret to creating overlays, drop-down menus, and all kinds of awesome custom layouts. So, we've covered accessibility, server requests, layout rules, and on the surface, these seem like totally disconnected topics, right? But the expert way of thinking, the pro mindset, connects all of them with one single powerful principle. That one big idea is separation of concerns. It's the ultimate why behind everything we've talked about. Using an empty alt tag, that keeps your presentation choices out of your content structure. Using ARIA on a div instead of misusing some other tag, that keeps your HTML semantically pure. It all boils down to this. HTML is for meaning and structure. CSS is for presentation and style. The expert developer has this rule burned into their brain, and it leads to code that is cleaner, way more accessible, and so much easier to maintain. You know, we started this whole thing by asking what separates a good developer from a great one. And the answer is knowing the why. You now know why empty alt tags are crucial, why ARIA is there to fill the semantic gap, and why the box model behaves the way it does. You've got that deeper understanding now. So the only question left is, what are you going to build with it?